The Consumer Price Index just printed 330.293 for March 2026. That is not a rounding error. That is the highest CPI reading in this entire data series, up from 327.460 in February and 326.588 in January. And it is a direct warning sign for your paycheck, your grocery bill, and anyone hoping to buy a home this year. This number matters, and here is exactly why. Let's start with what headline CPI actually tells us. The CPIAUCSL reading of 330.293 in March 2026 means that the basket of goods and services the average American buys costs dramatically more than it did even a year ago. Compare that to April 2025, when the same index sat at 320.302. That is nearly 10 full index points of price increases in under 12 months. Every time you walk into a grocery store and feel like something is off, like your cart is less full but your receipt is longer, this number is the proof. The trend has been relentless and upward every single month in this dataset, with zero reversals. Not one month of relief. Now, here is where it gets more complicated and more important. Core inflation, which strips out food and energy prices to give the Fed a cleaner read on underlying price pressure, came in at 334.165 in March 2026 on the CPILFESL index. That is actually higher than the headline CPI number. Core went from 333.512 in February to 334.165 in March, continuing a steady climb that started at 326.467 back in April 2025. The reason this matters is that the Federal Reserve watches core inflation more closely than headline, and core is telling the Fed that the price problem is not just at the gas pump or the produce aisle, it is baked into services, rent, and everything else that does not swing wildly with oil prices. That makes the Fed's job significantly harder. So what is the Fed actually doing about all of this? Right now, the federal funds rate is sitting at 3.64%, and it has been locked there since January 2026 through at least April 2026. Before that, it was 3.72% in December 2025, 3.88% in November, 4.09% in October, and 4.22% in September. The Fed has been cutting rates slowly since the summer of 2025, when the rate was 4.33%, but with CPI at 330.293 and core at 334.165, the question the market is screaming right now is, can the Fed keep cutting, or does this inflation print put rate cuts on ice? The data suggests the Fed is in a genuine bind. They have cut rates by nearly 70 basis points since May 2025, but inflation has not cooperated. Every month that core CPI rises, the case for further rate cuts weakens. And if the Fed pauses or reverses, every borrower in America feels it. Nowhere is that felt more painfully than in the housing market. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate just hit 6.37% as of May 7, 2026, up from 6.30% the week before, and up from a recent low of 5.98% on February 26. Let that sink in. Mortgage rates touched nearly 6% in late February, giving homebuyers a brief window of hope, and then reversed hard. As of this week, you are paying 6.37% on a 30-year mortgage. On a $400,000 loan, that is roughly $2,500 a month in principal and interest alone, before taxes, insurance, or HOA fees. The housing market was already frozen by affordability concerns, and this latest move in rates is throwing another bucket of cold water on any recovery. Sellers are locked in by their low pandemic-era rates. Buyers are locked out by 6.37% rates. And the CPI data showing continued price pressure makes it hard to see how rates fall meaningfully anytime soon. Here is the bottom line that connects all of these numbers. CPI at 330.293 is not a blip. Core at 334.165 is not noise. The Fed at 3.64% is not cutting aggressively enough to offset the damage. And a 6.37% mortgage rate is not inviting anyone into the housing market. The inflation fight is not over. The data from Fred is telling a very clear story. Prices are still climbing, the Fed is moving cautiously, and the cost of borrowing, whether for a home, a car, or a business, remains elevated. What you do with that information is the most important financial decision you will make in 2026. If you are sitting in cash waiting for rates to fall, this data says be patient but be strategic. If you are trying to buy a home, understand that 6.37% may not be the peak, but it also may not fall as fast as you hope. And if you are an investor watching the Fed, the March CPI print of 330.293 just made the next rate decision a whole lot more complicated.